Whether on the field, on the court, or on the balance beam, there's more to winning than the final score. Hi, I'm Patrick Manning of Black Desert Resort. We recognize the effort it takes to succeed. That's why we are proud to partner with the Utah Checkdown, the podcast that tells you the story before the game, then gives you a recap of what happened when it's all over. The grit, the glory, and the disappointments. Join us for stories of Utah's finest athletes and coaches. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown Podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown Podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be with you again this week. Today we will definitely preview the Arizona State game, so let's look forward to that. But first, let me tell you about our partners, Black Desert, who are helping with the KSL.com Beyond the Game video series. The videos highlight various athletes and give an inside look into their life. Recently, we talked with former Utah offensive lineman Garrett Bowles about how a second chance at life allowed him to pay it forward to troubled youth. You can check out that video and many others on KSL.com. Black Desert is a new resort destination in St. George that features a championship Tom Weiskopf 19-hole golf course and combines a private club feel with destination resort golf amid lava fields and 360-degree vistas. Black Desert is changing entertainment in southern Utah, and they're just beginning. Black Desert, where remarkable is within reach, home of the Black Desert Championship PGA Tour, which is actually kicking off today if you're listening to this on Thursday. So there you go. Go give it a look. Go see the beautiful course and check it out. So let's jump into Utah football, though. We, as I mentioned, we will preview Arizona State. Utah does play Arizona State tomorrow, Friday, if you're listening to this on a Thursday. But first, I want to kind of give an update on all that has transpired since we last talked on Monday. And it's not like there's been a ton, but, you know, in the ever-changing evolution of this sport, some things do change a little bit. So let's jump into that. So first off, with Cam Rising, I know we're here with Cam Rising again, and I'm hopeful that this is soon behind us so that we can actually talk about more than just the QB situation, right? It's not fair to anybody else on the team, and there's a lot of good things happening, and it's time, right? Like, it's time for us to be able to move on. So, but here we are. So Cam Rising, the status for what happened. So on Tuesday, we got to see a little bit of him in terms of that he stayed after practice to work a little bit more. Unfortunately, he was in an area where we really couldn't see, so I don't know, how he was throwing or different things that way. But when he came off the field, he did not have anything on his hand, his throwing hand, to be clear, and none of the cast or brace or anything that's limiting what he's able to do now. I don't know if that's indicative of anything, but I know he has put in a lot of work. He's definitely taken a majority of the reps this week, and so that's can go both one of two ways, right? If Rising is going to play this week, that's great. He does need all those reps to be able to be the starter. However, if he is a late game scratch like he has been the last little bit, that does significantly hurt Isaac Wilson. Just the nature of it, right? The benefit here, and I will say this is maybe a silver lining, I don't know, is that last week Isaac did take all of the first team reps. He took the majority of the reps, and so he did get preparation for this game. It is much more pared back on the bye week than it is during a regular week, but he did get all the reps. So if he is the guy that does start like he has been for the last little bit, he at least has some preparation. It's not like he's coming into this cold and he's there. But Isaac is definitely putting in the work and trying to be the number one guy if that's the case, if they need him, right? And so there is a benefit there in terms of the bye week, but still not ideal if Cam is a late scratch and everything. Let me kind of read a quote from Kyle Whittingham from his coach's show on Tuesday. He did say, "We will see what happens this week with Cam, and we're hoping. I think it's looking encouraging, but I'm not going to say anything until we actually get to the game. He practiced well today. All of those things, are basically aligned with what I've been hearing in terms of trending well towards seeing Cam on Friday. Excuse me, I was going to say Saturday. But this is tough, right? Like nobody wants to go into this kind of getting their heart broken again, and you want to go into this game optimistic, but you have to be realistic as well. So I've heard, as I said, that things are trending towards Cam playing, but I did hear that before the Oklahoma State game as well, and things kind of changed. So my best bet for you is go into this game assuming that Isaac Wilson is going to start. You've got a great backup. He's done well. He's made progress every single week. Absolutely has the capability and the power to be able to win on the road against Arizona State. He's actually only won his games on the road. So, I mean, maybe there's some secret unlocked power there. But if he's not the starter, then it is Cam, and that's a good thing for Utah, assuming that Cam is fully healthy, or at least healthy enough that he feels like he can do what he needs to with the ball and move things around. So, obviously, if Cam is available, that changes kind of how this game looks. I think that really gives Utah a much better opportunity, just simply because his experience and what they're able to do, and that's pretty well documented. So I think if Cam is available, that's good things for Utah. You still got a lot of reps for Isaac Wilson, and he's going to continue to develop, but you've got to get Cam on the field and see where things are going. So that's kind of where it is in that situation. Like I said, don't build yourself up to be disappointed. But as I said, things are trending well based on what I've heard. But like I said, they were similar in that Oklahoma State game. And, I'm not going to get into all the nuances of that. But, there's different things that can happen throughout the week. And maybe it swells up. I don't know. I'm speculating at this point, but different things can happen that make it a challenge. So, we'll go with that. Outside of that, this is a team that is hopeful after this bye week that things correct themselves, right? Obviously, if Cam comes back, that changes a lot of things. I think that gives the team a renewed sense of confidence, just knowing that you have your guy back there, that you can do pretty much everything that you've wanted to do. And so I think there is that confidence. However, Kyle Whittingham, Sharif Shah, those are the coaches that we got to talk to this week. They very much so talked about the sting of a loss going into a bye week and how they hate that. Obviously, I mean, nobody wants that loss, and you want to get it kind of cleared from your memory quicker. But on a loss, it stings more in the sense that it's there. A lot of these guys, they're not dwelling on it, right? It's a loss. At the end of the day, very few teams go undefeated in a season, so it's not like this ruined all plans for Utah. Dented it, sure, but this didn't ruin everything. And so, when they talk about the sting of loss going into a bye week, it can do one of two things, right? On one hand, it can put this team into a funk. And kind of keep it there until they can get a win, which is much harder if you're in that funk because you come out slow. You're not really engaged as well as you need to, and it becomes a challenge. So you've got one hand on that, that side. On the other hand, it becomes kind of a galvanizing moment, right? It becomes an opportunity for you to come in and say, look, we're not this team. This is not who we are. We don't lose to Arizona, and so we've got to show that we can play every single game the right way, have the right mindset, approach it with the right mindset, approach it as if, every game is the game that we have to win or else the season is over. And this becomes, like I said, a galvanizing moment. It serves as kind of a way to refocus and rejuvenate and re-energize. Utah's first Pac-12 championship, when they won, that season didn't obviously start out well. Utah wasn't looking like a championship caliber team, and then obviously went on to do well. And Cam obviously took over and everything changed. And, that's in the history books. But, these seasons have that way. That's generally why you want to try to get some of this stuff out in non-conference season. Utah, unfortunately, kind of fell victim to Arizona at home in a way that, they didn't want. But it can serve as a way to refocus, right? And there's a lot of factors, and we went into that. I talked about why Utah lost against Arizona. But at the end of the day, it should just serve as a reminder that you have to be on your game every single week, or else, a team is going to beat you, right? Like, you can't just go in and stroll in and expect to, to win games. And, there's some games like that, and I would say that Utah's schedule for the next few weeks is more aligned with that, where you feel like you can just stroll in and you can win. But any one of these teams is a team that Utah can lose to, right? And so you go from having this perceived power of being the top of the conference, and I think many still believe that Utah can be there. But then, all it takes is, one loss to compound on another, and then different things happen, and, that becomes a challenge. And so definitely winnable games in this upcoming stretch before the next bye week. And so this is the time where Utah really has to kind of solidify themselves and show who they are. Utah hasn't reached their full potential on either sides of the ball. They know that. They want to see more. And so this becomes a great opportunity, and what better opportunity than on Fridays. So we'll see how that goes, right? I mean, it's easy to say one thing and do another. Leading up to the Pac-12 championship game, Tyler Huntley's last year, there's a lot of talk about how excited they were and motivated and everything, and they were. It didn't happen, right? Sometimes you fall flat. Those bowl games, you come out flat and you say the right things, but your body is doing another, and you're feeling a different thing. So this is definitely not a time of despair for Utah. I know that these last 2 weeks-ish have been rough for Utah fans, and I've seen it a lot on social media, and fans are kind of going through the emotions. I think had Utah lost, in a way where Arizona felt like they beat them, maybe that's a little different story, but you compound that on the Cam Rising injury and everything, and it just kind of snowballed into one massive amount of suck, we'll call it. It wasn't great, and nobody really was happy with the situation, and so things are on the upward trend, but these are the games especially where you're going against a team that in theory you should be able to win. You're going against a team that you absolutely blew out last year. This is one of those games that I don't want to call them a trap game. I mean, I know it kind of is, but this becomes a challenge where you kind of have to refocus and be ready. So we'll see what happens. I think the team, the things that they're saying is good, but like I said, you have to show up on the field. So let's pause here briefly to we're going to talk hockey. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of weird on a Utah football podcast, but we talk about hockey. The Utah Hockey Club started their inaugural season in Salt Lake on Tuesday, and they got a 5-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. If you didn't get a chance to be a part of the action, you can still grab a piece of history with a limited edition 2-piece puck set from Nico Sports. They only have 2024, you get it? Yeah. Sets available, so you can get yours before they're gone. Just as kind of an incentive, you can use promo code Furlong, so FURLONG at nicosports.com. That's NIKCO sports.com. You can get the puck set, and you can save $10 if you use my promo code. So give that a look and maybe get a little bit of piece of history. It was a lot of fun to be able to see that on Tuesday and just kind of see what this could mean for the state of Utah. If they can have a kind of that moment where you can kind of get the fans behind you, this becomes a great opportunity to have another professional team in the market, and so I think this will be a lot of fun. So I know I've seen a lot of people that are still kind of new to hockey that are checking it out and asking questions, and there's a lot of fans that have been hockey fans forever, and so this is an exciting time to be able to have a team here, if not for the chance to see the team that you've been rooting for your entire life, to be able to come into the Delta Center and get to see them. So like I said, grab that piece of action and that limited edition piece of, we're going to go there. Let's go back to football. So let's preview Arizona State. We got a little off the rails there at the end of that, but we'll go into the Arizona State portion of this. So Arizona State, let's talk about last year a little bit. Utah won 55-3 in Salt Lake City. This was the game after that dreaded loss to Oregon where Utah no-showed, right? You had College game day there, and Utah just absolutely no-showed. The situation was not great for Utah, and Oregon was clearly the better team. But Utah has been better than that, and everybody knows that. So I think they took out all their frustrations against Arizona State. That you did that with an incredibly tough ground game. I think Utah had something like 350 yards in the ground game, 513 yards total. They also held Arizona State to 40 passing yards and 63 total yards of offense in the game. So that was pretty remarkable. Maybe Arizona State serves as kind of that the rebound from Utah's loss to Arizona. So maybe, every time that Arizona State has to follow Utah after a loss, it's not a good thing. Who knows? Friday night games in the desert are always wild. So I don't know. I don't know. These games are always a little bit tricky. But that's the nature of them. So this game is played tomorrow, Friday night at 8:30 p.m. in Tempe. This game will be on ESPN. The betting line, depending on where you look, some places have it starting at 3. I saw it starting at 5 for Utah. They were giving 5. So the betting line, once again, as it has done with Utah this year, it's been all over the place. Not nearly as drastic movement. Did get up to 6.5 at one point for Utah, but it's steadily around 4. So this is just showing that Utah is favored in this game. Not knowing who is going to play obviously leads into that a little bit. I think if Cam Rising was a known commodity in terms of playing and different things, that betting line is far different. But that's the nature of what it is. So, I mean, if you're really confident in Utah, not that I'm giving you betting advice. That's not what I'm here to doing, but smash that line if you can, if you have confidence in Utah. So, yeah, this is a game where two teams are coming in at 4-1 on the season. Utah obviously gets the extra bye week, and so they get the extra week of prep. Arizona State had a game last week against Kansas where they won 35-31. But this is an improved ASU team, right? Like, this isn't the same team as last year. That's not to say that Arizona State has suddenly turned the corner and everything is, roses and they're going to be this dominant team. But you can see the pieces, right? You can see things coming together. It was similar to a few years ago when Jed Fish got Arizona to where they were, right? You could see the pieces coming. You could see them finally starting to build on that momentum. That's where I think we're at with Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. A great offensive mind, a great coach. The teams love him, right? Like the players, they love him. And so you're getting a lot of momentum and energy coming out of Tempe right now with this team. And so I think in some ways Arizona State becomes a sleeping giant, right? Not quite this year, but I think you're seeing a team that is starting to believe in itself. They're starting to have the pieces to be able to compete. They weren't in the depths that they were last year. Didn't have the guys to be able to do what they needed to, and they've worked hard to get there. This year they got 29 players out of the transfer portal. Kenny Dillingham really tried to plug in players in all the positions that they needed, right? And more importantly, that was done in the trenches, right? Arizona State lost a lot of games last year simply in trench play. They were out physicaled. They didn't have the guys to be able to compete. Quarterback play, was not great. And they've improved that, and we'll get into kind of that a little bit. But this is a team that, like I said, 4-1 on the season. They are a good team. I don't know if they're great yet, but this is a team that absolutely can beat Utah. They're on their home field, especially if they gain momentum. Utah's played there before where things kind of spiral, right? And that place becomes pretty electric if they get some momentum and Utah's losing. So it should be fun, right? But how did Arizona State get here? So let's look at this a little bit. So yes, as I said, they are 4-1 on the season. They have wins over Wyoming, Mississippi State, Texas State, and Kansas. Their only loss is to Texas Tech. But this is a team that's done well. So outside of that, Texas State or Texas Tech, the other teams haven't been great. Wyoming, Mississippi State, and Kansas collectively have only won 3 games. Each team has won 1 game. They haven't been great. It just is not the same as what you've seen in the past with like a Wyoming that, you go into Laramie and they're just absolutely difficult to beat. They didn't go to Laramie this year. Wyoming came to Tempe, but it was a 48-7 win. This is a blowout. Arizona State then beat Mississippi State 30-23. Closer game. Texas State was another close one, and Texas State is a good team. They're obviously not a Power 5 or Power 4 team, But they're a good team that has done a lot of good over the last few years, especially in the transfer portal. And Arizona State got a win on the road, 31-28, so tough environment, but still close, right? That loss at Texas Tech was 30-22. It was close-ish, but Texas Tech was better at the end. Texas Tech is actually 5-1 on the season, so been a little crazy. Their only loss this year is actually a blowout to Washington State. So kind of interesting to see how that is. Kansas, they beat 35-31. It was a close game. This is a team, they're winning the games, right? And so you have to credit them for that. I think their win total at the beginning of the season was projected at 4.5. And sure, they're right there at that mark. But I think they're going to, they could potentially get a bowl. All it takes is 2 more wins. And I think in the Big 12 right now, there's a potential for them to get that. And so this is a team that I think is showing a lot of promise. However, those wins aren't necessarily against world beaters, right? These are teams that aren't great. The combined record between all of these games is 11-16. So it's not been this murderer's row of competition for Arizona State. But I think the main point there is it's giving them confidence. They feel like they know what they're doing, and they're all kind of on the same page, right? And momentum is a tricky thing. I know a lot of people want to talk about momentum as not being a real thing, but I think anybody that's been a part of any game where you're sitting in the stadium even, right? Like you can feel the momentum shift, right? You can feel it shift one way or the other. There's just kind of this aura around the arena or stadium, and you can kind of feel how that goes. And, on a week-to-week basis, that's maybe a little harder to see. But I think when you start winning, you're more motivated to do things, especially as a team that really didn't do well last year. Once you start winning, that feels good, and you want to keep doing that. And so this can be a dangerous team. And but at the same time, this isn't an Arizona State team that I would say you don't have to 100% fear. But as we saw against Arizona, this can easily change and things can be done to make this really difficult for Utah. I will say that this Arizona State team could potentially be better than Arizona, at least more collectively. I think Arizona has the pieces, especially with their two, with Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan, that puts them in a lot of games, and their defense is obviously showing up. But there's a chance that this Arizona State team could show out better at the end. So we'll see. So going into this game, Arizona State will be without 2 of its top defensive players for the first half. They both received targeting penalties in their last game against Kansas in the second half, and so they've already served that first half suspension, and they have to finish the second half of that in the first half. A lot of halves there. In the Utah game. So they're going to miss linebacker Keyshawn Elliott. He's the guy that is really kind of the leader of that defense in terms of communication. He's the guy that has the helmet communication and so he's getting all those plays and doing everything there. So you're losing a big piece there that'll be important, especially in the first half. And then you're losing a defensive lineman in Clayton Smith, another solid player. He's one of their higher graded players on the defensive side of the ball. So two key players that are instrumental in what Arizona State wants to do, and that becomes a challenge for them. They get them back in the second half, but this is the chance where if Utah can kind of cement who they are, that changes things. We've seen this in the past where players have to sit out that first half, and then they come back in the second half, and it really rejuvenates a team, depending on who it is, and helps. Now, I don't know that you'd put the entire defensive mindset on these two players, but at the same time, I think they are key pieces of it, and so you want to be able to attack them when they're vulnerable and get those points where you can. So we'll see how that shapes up, and if anything changes. Like I said, you don't usually see a massive swing from players on any given moment that way, but you take away key players and it has that potential, but they will be without them to start. Utah on that side, Utah has been fine outside of a couple injuries. There's been some nicks and things happening on. Obviously, Connor O'Toole and Karene Reed are still questionable. I would say that it's trending better for probably Connor O'Toole, but I don't know that either will give it a go this week. I think they're still kind of in a situation that's tough for them, especially with Karene. I know he's making progress. It's just more how his body can feel once he gets healthy. I think, as I've mentioned, Karene, more than anybody on that defensive side, probably is the most noticeable absence. Not that Connor O'Toole isn't, because he absolutely wreaks havoc on that, on that line, and you need him in there. But Karene is that guy that, that leader that gives the communication. He helps guys get in alignment, really just has a great understanding of that defense. And so having a veteran leader out there absolutely helps. And Utah will be counting down the days when they get him back. But, Utah's been able to find some players to fill in. Jonathan Hall, Sione Fotu, a lot of those two have done a pretty good job and been able to help with that defense. But you obviously want to be at full strength there, and so we'll see what happens. But I can't imagine that they probably play this week. We'll see. It just depends on what's going on. So, both teams are going to have some limits. Utah's obviously been playing without their two guys for a while, and they've been doing decently, except for that Arizona game. So, not the end of the world. So let's look at a little bit of the stats. Just these generic stats, maybe kind of what, who this team is. They're very much so dependent on the run. This is a team that does well there. They rank 18th in the country at 218.2 yards per game. They obviously have a great talent in Cam Scattaboo, and we'll talk about him a little bit. But this is a team that really tries to emphasize the run-first mentality, right? Kenny Dillingham has kind of really looked as Kyle Whittingham as a so-called mentor without him really, pulling him aside and helping him. But he likes to model what he does, especially in terms of culture, and not necessarily offensive style, but culture and the way that Kyle Whittingham does things. But a lot of this, too, is he wants to win the trenches. He wants to do well there. He also wants to develop a strong ground game. And once that works, then, you can mix in other things. And so you've got a team that is absolutely embracing that. As I said, they do well. They're ranked in the top 20 in the country in rushing offense. So this is a team that can move the ball really well on the ground, especially with Cam Scattaboo. But on the other side of the ball, they're actually really solid on the rushing defense. They rank 20th in the country. They are only allowing 96.0, so 96 total yards on defense. And so it's actually better than Utah right now. Utah, just as a reference point, is allowing 107.2. You can explain a lot of those for Utah. I get it, right? Like, I understand, you're probably screaming at the podcast right now saying that Utah's better than that, but the stats don't lie, and that's just the nature of it right now. You have a bad game or a bad couple games and things spiral. So I think at the end of the season, Utah's is going to look much better than Arizona State's, but this is a team that's really putting a lot of emphasis on that, right? Stopping the run. This becomes a situation where, especially if Isaac Wilson is starting, they're going to load that box up, right? You've seen that with every single team. They're loading up the box. They're putting a lot of pressure on Isaac to be able to make plays at a faster rate. It's what you do with freshman quarterback. This isn't necessarily anything against Isaac. It's just you do that to freshmen, right? You try to speed them up. You try to put pressure on them, and you do that. And so if you have a team that does really well already in a run defense where you're putting pressure, you're stopping that line, you're not allowing a lot of yardage, that becomes a challenge. And so if this is the case where Isaac starts, you've got to look at that as a way to be able to relax it a little bit, try to ease him and get things going. But the ground game for Utah is going to have to be on point, right? Mekhi Bernard, Kyle Whittingham has talked about him as this week, especially saying that he probably is that bell cow back right now. He is the lead guy. And that's obvious, right? Like, I'm not saying anything that's unusual. But for Utah to have success, especially against a run defense like this, they have to have other contributors, right? You got to have Mike Mitchell. As I've said, he's hampered with injury, and you're going to get the best that you can possibly get with him, knowing that for him, similar to what it was with Jaquindon Jackson last year, time heals all injuries, and he's just that you can't do that fully in a season, especially unless you take him out of competition. But they need him. He's been utilized in those third down situations a lot, short yardage situations, and it's still kind of a telltale for opposing teams knowing that, you trot him out onto the field, what Utah's going to do. But if the offensive line is blocking correctly and he's able to run the right route, things are okay. So you need him. Obviously, Jalen Glover is trying to work his way back onto the field. I didn't get a chance to talk to him this week, but he did talk to Joe Coles at the Deseret News and just said it's more personal things off the field. It's not about his game that has kept him off. But curious to see his return. Kyle Whittingham has talked about how he's probably going to factor into the offense maybe a little bit more as he's developing and coming out of this situation, this personal situation that he's facing. And so, for Utah's sake, you hope that he's able to get on the field, because Jalen is another veteran guy that can really change the tone of this game. If you can get Mekhi and Jalen and Mike Mitchell, and you also get Charlie Vincent in there, Dijon Stanley, you go back to that diverse running back room that allows Utah to do a lot. Right now, they've been pretty one-dimensional within that own room, right? It's Mekhi Bernard or bust. And so if you can get some more diversity out of that room and get a little bit more, I think that really bodes well for Utah, regardless of who starts under center. So, that's going to be a situation that I'm curious to see how it develops on Friday and kind of what happens. So outside of that, Arizona State has been pretty decent on third and fourth downs. They're, above average, I would say. 44th on third down, so they're averaging 44% of the time a conversion. Fourth down, it's at 60%. So, I mean, they're doing well there. It's just a matter of trying to limit Cam Scatterboom. He obviously becomes a key focal point of that and why they've been able to have success. Outside of that, their red zone conversion, they rank 111th. They haven't been great in the red zone. They're converting at a 75% clip. So it's not been great. As much as I say that, they are scoring just a slight bit more touchdowns than Utah in the red zone. They're at 54.2% and Utah's at 50%. Now that's if I've done the math correctly, it's like one touchdown versus Utah. If Utah scores, we're not going to get in the red zone with that. We did that last time, but this is a team that they're not scoring the best when they get there, and then field goals they're only hitting 20.8%, and so they've been in the red zone 24 times. Utah's been in there 22 times, so you can kind of see the comparison there in terms of that. But this is a chance for Utah, right? The Utah's defense feasts on those kinds of moments, and if they get into the red zone, Utah still has a good chance that they won't convert any points there, and so there's opportunities there. We'll say. I think this is kind of indicative of who this team is. They're continually growing and they're continually getting better. Their red zone offense isn't quite where it needs to be, but I think Kenny Dillingham will continue to get it there and continue to improve it. So opportunities for Utah, like I said, this is a team that a lot can be done against, but you have to still be on your game. And just another stat, they've only allowed 7 sacks this year. To that point, Utah's allowed 9. So there's opportunities there. I'm curious to see how this breaks, who wins the trench play. If Utah's able to put pressure on Sam Leavitt, their quarterback, that bodes well for them and could absolutely help. But this is a team that does well to protect their guy. He's also pretty mobile, and so he scrambles a bit, and probably not as well as Noah Fafita in terms of scrambling abilities, but he's definitely got that ability to be able to get out of the pocket, evade tackles, and kind of frustrate a defense, as you saw 2 weeks ago with Utah when they tried to do that against Noah Fafita. They had contain, everything was great, and then all of a sudden he scrambles out of it, and things didn't work well. So that clearly becomes a key. You want to be able to make sure that you keep that contain and that you keep him down. So possibilities there. So let's look at some of their key players. And this is a team where they, like I've said, they've improved everywhere, so I don't want to paint the picture that this is a team that only has like 1 or 2 guys. At the end of the day, though, they do only have like 1 or 2, 3 guys that are going to be your main players, right? The the main people to focus on. If you can take them away, generally speaking, you're going to do well. Let's start with Sam Levitt. Sam Levitt's their quarterback, transferred over from Michigan State. He's a sophomore. He was actually had a lot of interest in Utah in the transfer portal. There was a lot of conversations back and forth with them. I can't remember if he actually visited to take a trip. I think he did. Now I'm trying to remember. I don't know. But either way, Utah was very interested in him. Kyle loved his pocket presence, his ability to escape the pocket, and so there's a lot of praise there for this guy. So far, he's thrown for 1,012 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, only completing passes at a 59% completion rate, which isn't what you want. He's only completing passes for an average of 7.6 yards. So a lot of short yardage situations. It's not anything where he's necessarily going to beat you with his arm. That's not to say that he can't. It just hasn't been kind of the staple of this offense. They've been a lot more short work behind the line of scrimmage, bubble screens, other types of screens to be able to help alleviate some of that, as well as a lot of work in kind of the intermediate part of the field. He has added to the team with 257 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, so he is a threat there. You get him in the red zone, especially close, and you absolutely have to pay attention to him because he will escape and get a touchdown. So a talented kid. Obviously, I don't think we've seen his true full potential, and I think there's a lot more to go for him. He is their second highest graded player on offense with the 77.3. So good, but not great. But he's doing well, and I think this is a quarterback that you absolutely have to respect. As I mentioned with his throws, he's actually graded out the highest in the intermediate throws, so kind of like 9 to 15 yards in the center of the field. That's kind of where he's made his hay, we'll say. Is that the phrase? I don't know. That's just where he's had the most success. But it hasn't, that doesn't mean that they've thrown the ball there. If anything, I think they've only thrown it there like 5-6 times. And so like he's graded out well there. And so you can get beat, but they just don't throw it there. The bulk of their passes are 9 yards or shorter, right? So in the flats right there, really working kind of the short yardage situations. He's thrown 50 passes in a short pass. 36 have been in the center. So he likes the center of the field. A quarter of all of his passes are in that area. So that's where he's going to work. And you've got some behind the line of scrimmage. He's had 29 passes behind the line of scrimmage. So this is a guy that, if you can do it right, he's not going to necessarily beat you through the air. He has the potential. He has made those plays. But on that same front, Arizona State just doesn't have the wide receiver depth that maybe some of these other teams have had coming into this game, right? You go into that Oklahoma State game, and there was a lot of talk about their wide receivers and having like these 3 dynamic wide receivers. And I'm not saying that they weren't. Alan Bowman just couldn't get them the ball, and Utah put a lot of pressure on them and made it so that they weren't getting anything. But this is not like that situation where you have to genuinely respect every single receiver out there. And I say respect in terms of you have to be very mindful of these guys because they're going to make you pay. That's not to say that Arizona State doesn't have quality wide receivers. They're just not to that level of where Utah has played before. So their main wide receiver, their leading receiver is Jordan Tyson. He's a sophomore. He's put up 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just as a reference point, that's half the receiving yards of Tedero McMillan. McMillan leads the conference in receiving yards, and so he's obviously the guy. But Tyson is, he's really good in what he's able to do, and can beat Utah by all means. Like, this is not a situation where Utah can just sit back and say, okay, we're gonna play the run game and everything's gonna be good behind us. That can be the case, but this is not a team that's necessarily trotting out a ton of receivers. You got a lot of options, and Utah has to be worried about it. Like I said, they can beat you, but at the same point, Sam Levitt isn't completing passes at a high clip, and so it's not this crazy offense that Utah has to worry about on that front. So the main focal point obviously becomes Cam Scatterboom. He has been pretty dynamic. He's rushed for 615 yards this season, 6 touchdowns. Let me point out though, the crazy thing about this is Boise State's running back Ashton Genty. He has more yards than most of these players in just yards after contact. Like he has something like 684 yards after contact. He's rushed over for 1,000 yards. I mean, like that guy's incredible. So like we can talk about Cam Scatterboom, and I think he's a phenomenal player, and I'm not trying to disrespect him at all. But like it's incredible to see this outworld, player that's doing all these things where he's just doing everything. Just a weird side note, but as I said, Scatterboom has 615 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. He's averaging about 5.5 yards per carry. It's good, it's respectable. It's a number that you want to be above, and you absolutely have to pay attention to him. He's second in the Big 12 in rushing, just behind Texas Tech's Taj Brooks. There was a lot of T's in that moment right there. Texas Tech's Taj. Yeah, there we go. We're getting a lesson in speech today, which I'm not very good at. So thanks for listening. But yeah, he's second in the Big 12. He's doing well. Obviously, the main focal point of their offense, they're going to put a lot of emphasis on him. In their last meeting against Utah last year, and it's hard to kind of say that this is a 1-to-1 ratio of this will happen because they played last time. Utah held him to 31 yards on 12 attempts, only 2.6 yards per carry. But that game was absolutely bad for Arizona State. They had no quarterback. They cycled through, I think, 2, maybe even 3 quarterbacks that night. It just wasn't going well. Scatterboom was often used in the Wildcat a lot last year to be able to just get them any offense. Instead of having a quarterback, they felt like it was just better to have him running the offense and do what they needed to. So he's a multi-talented guy that can do what you need to, and you absolutely have to respect him. But Utah has found ways to limit him. But like I said, they knew that there was no threat in the passing game, and so they loaded up that box and they made his life hell. So there's potential that they could do that again this year. I think with Sam Leavitt back there, there's much more. You have to pay a little bit more respect to the passing game, but I don't know that it has to be that much, right? I think Sam can do what he needs to, but it's not going to be a situation where they shouldn't load up the box. So Scatterboom will be your guy. He's your highest graded on offense, and it's by a good margin. He's 83.1 on PFF. That's a good score, a good grade, I should say. He's a talented guy. He's a veteran guy. He's a senior. He's been in the system. He knows what he's doing. You give him an inch, and he's going to be gone. So for a Utah defense that has had their moments in the run where they've kind of allowed too much, this could be a problem, right? And that becomes a challenge for Utah. But it's not an offense that you're necessarily looking at and sweating, right? Like this isn't like you're coming back to Caleb Williams and the USC offense and trying to figure out how you're going to stop all those pieces and everything. This is a much more toned down offense that, if Utah just performs the way that it should, assignment sound football, takes the right angles, does what they need to be able to wrap up and not do these arm tackles that got them in trouble a couple weeks ago, they should be fine. And so to that point, the keys to the game, in my opinion, are stop the run, right? Like if you can stop the run game, this becomes very difficult for Arizona State. They have guys that can beat you in the passing game, and so there are opportunities there, but you're going to take your odds, right? If you can stop Cam Scatterboom and the other guys that they have, and they loaded up in the transfer portal and have some guys that can do some stuff there as well to kind of free him and give him some time. Excuse me. This becomes an opportunity where you force Sam Leavitt to beat you with his arm, and if he does that, great, and then you can kind of adjust and do everything. But this is a game where if you can absolutely control the physicality in the trenches and you can put some pressure on them and control that ground game, that gives you far more success. The odds are far more in your favor that you can win this game. Obviously, the offense has to do their part, right? Like Utah has to be able to put points on the board. You saw that last week or 2 weeks ago against Arizona. The defense, for the most part, actually did its job, right? There were moments where they absolutely got burned, but they limited them in an amount of points that they scored. Utah just didn't do their job on offense. And so that kind of becomes the story of that game. That's where this game can kind of fall as well in terms of what you're able to do. But even in probably a lesser situation, if Utah can control that line of scrimmage, they can stop the run game. This becomes a far easier opportunity for Utah. Like I said, crazy things happen in the desert. Cam Skattebo could run for 150 yards, and Utah's in a lot of trouble. If he sniffs anything near 150 yards, Utah absolutely is in trouble, in my opinion. I think this is a team that they have to limit him, get him under 75 yards. He'll probably get a few here and there, but if he's getting anything over that, I think Utah's probably not been as assignment sound. They're probably not keyed in on what they need to do, and things become much more of a challenge. But this is a team that shouldn't pose too many problems for Utah if Utah plays the game that it should, with or without Cam Rising under center. So I hope that gives you some insight onto this team. They are a good team. I say all that, but I know that they are a good team. They're finding ways to win games. Kenny Dillingham is a great motivator, a great guy, and he's able to get his team doing what they want. So all it takes is a little momentum, playing at your home and kind of getting that crowd into it. If Utah can't get that crowd out of it, I think this becomes a challenge, and it becomes much more difficult, especially if Isaac is starting, because it's just harder, right? Like all the elements go against you. You don't have your fans in your favor. I know he kind of thrives off of opposing fans, so I think there's some of that helps him. But this becomes a challenge if Utah isn't ready. So we'll see how it goes. It's not an easy challenge, but it's not the worst challenge to come after a bye week. This becomes a great opportunity for Utah, so we'll see how it goes. But thanks for listening. We'll catch you again Monday after this game. We'll see how things go. But as I said, everything's trending generally well for Utah. It's just a matter of everything coming together. So with that, we will say goodbye.